Dr. Lucas Jennings sat at the back of the dimly lit room, a tablet in his hands, his eyes scanning a document that was classified far beyond Earth's clearance levels. He had gotten his hands on it, against all odds. This was his breakthrough, humanity's breakthrough. The speed formula. The very thing that could put Earth on equal footing with the galactic powers. The document detailed an advanced method of faster-than-light travel, a technology that could revolutionize space exploration for every species involved with the Galactic Council. Lucas had spent the last few months attending secret summits, trying to make connections, trying to get closer to the heart of alien technologies. The Council wasn't a bunch of naive, idealistic diplomats, they were a ruthless conglomerate of species who had achieved dominance by controlling the flow of technology, particularly travel between stars. Their power came from knowledge, and they kept it tightly guarded. Earth had long been left out of their circle, relegated to a minor player on the galactic stage, despite its technological advancements. But that was about to change. He had hacked into their archives. The data was encrypted with layers of security, each more complex than anything he had ever encountered. But Lucas Jennings wasn't just any scientist. He was one of the brightest minds Earth had ever produced, and where others saw an insurmountable wall of code, he saw an opportunity. Late nights in front of his terminal, countless failed attempts, and one particular stroke of genius allowed him to crack the formula wide open. The speed formula could give humanity the edge they needed, an edge that would allow them to navigate the galaxy on their own terms. Lucas wasn't an idealist. He knew that whoever controlled FTL, faster than light, travel controlled power in the galaxy. But what drove him wasn't the desire for power, it was the knowledge that Earth had the potential to stand shoulder to shoulder with the galactic elite. And it wasn't about to let it go to waste. Now that he had the formula, he had to act quickly. There wasn't time to contemplate the risks. A single mistake could doom not just him but everyone on Earth. He had copied the data to a secure location off-world, hidden behind layers of encrypted barriers. Even the most skilled hackers in the galaxy would have a hell of a time getting through. He knew the Galactic Council would eventually realize what had happened. But what could they do? They had no idea how human ingenuity worked. No idea that the smallest spark of creativity could unravel their most tightly held secrets. They might be the most advanced species in the galaxy, but they were slow, paralyzed by their own bureaucratic systems. Meanwhile, humans thrived on chaos, on the unorthodox, on improvisation. As Lucas leaned back in his chair, staring at the encrypted document one last time, a notification popped up on his screen. He had expected it, but seeing it in real time sent a chill down his spine. The Galactic Council had discovered the breach. He was no longer just a scientist. He was now a target. His heart raced. They would send their best operatives, the Council's elite agents, to track him down and recover the formula. They couldn't let something like this fall into the hands of a mere human. But what were they really going to do? Attack Earth? The same Earth that had barely managed to make it past the moon? The idea of the Galactic Council attacking the entire human race over a formula was laughable. Sure, they could probably send fleets, but that would just be more fuel for the fire. Humanity was far more resourceful than the Council could ever imagine. And they had no idea just how far Lucas was willing to go to protect his planet. The formula was hidden deep in a secure location, and the Council would have to move heaven and earth to retrieve it. Lucas knew the Council had been monitoring Earth for years, watching for any sign of significant technological advancement. But they couldn't have expected this. They couldn't have predicted that a human would be able to steal their most coveted piece of technology, and now it was too late. The speed formula was already in the hands of Earth's greatest asset, its people. Lucas shut down his terminal and packed his things. He needed to leave before the Council could trace his location. Every second counted now. As he stood, he couldn't help but smile. Humanity wasn't a fragile, primitive species anymore. They were evolving, adapting, and rising up. The galactic powers had underestimated them for too long. Outside, the streets of the city were eerily quiet. Word of the breach hadn't yet made its way to the public, but Lucas knew it was only a matter of time. If he was caught, there would be no one to blame but himself. He had made a decision, and there was no turning back. As he walked to the waiting transport that would take him to the underground lab where the formula was hidden, he couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement. Humanity had a long history of overcoming the odds, of surviving, thriving, and adapting in the face of overwhelming forces. Lucas had always known this, but now, more than ever, it was clear. This was humanity's time. The Galactic Council would come, they would demand their formula back. But when they arrived, they would find something they didn't expect. Humanity was no longer the underdog. They were a force to be reckoned with. And as the transport sped off into the night, Lucas's thoughts were consumed with a single question: would the Council be ready for what was coming? The response came faster than Lucas expected. He had barely enough time to transfer the formula to a secure location on Earth before the alarms went off across the galaxy. The Galactic Council wasted no time. A single message broadcasted across every communication network, an ultimatum that rattled even Lucas. To the Terran species, the Galactic Council demands the immediate return of our intellectual property, the speed formula, or face the consequences. You have 30 days. Do not test our resolve. It was a statement of power, a warning, and a promise. The arrogance of it made Lucas' blood boil, but he kept his composure. This was no longer about curiosity or exploration, it was war. They had underestimated humanity's ability to outthink them, to outlast them, and now they were about to pay the price. Lucas wasn't surprised by the threat, in fact, he'd anticipated it. The Council had countless fleets spread across the galaxy, each one capable of destroying Earth in minutes. But what they didn't understand was this: humanity was scrappy. We might not have the military might or the raw technological power of some of the other species, but we had a relentless drive to survive and innovate. We had creativity in abundance. The Council had no idea what kind of mess they had just unleashed. The problem was that Lucas knew there was no way he could return the formula. Not without risking everything humanity had fought for. If he gave it back, Earth would remain a second-class citizen in the galaxy. But if he kept it, the Council would come for them. And coming for Earth meant war on a scale humanity had never seen. He couldn't make this decision alone. Lucas knew he needed help. He immediately reached out to his most trusted allies, several other scientists, military contacts, and a few shady but capable figures who owed him favors. Among them was Colonel Sarah Lawson, a no-nonsense officer who had spent years in interstellar diplomacy. She was the one person Lucas trusted to understand the gravity of the situation. Lucas briefed Sarah on the gravity of the Council's threat. "We don't give this back," he said, voice tight with urgency. "If we do, humanity stays a footnote in galactic history. If we don't, they'll level Earth. We're being given an ultimatum, but what if we use this to our advantage?" Sarah's eyes narrowed. "You're suggesting we fight them?" Lucas sighed. "Not directly. But we can't let them have the formula. We can't let them think they can push us around. They'll attack Earth, yes, but the question is, what's the cost to them? If we have the formula, we have the leverage." The conversation quickly turned to strategy, with Sarah suggesting they explore unconventional methods of defense. "They won't expect us to outthink them. Earth doesn't have the fleet strength to take on a Council warship. But a few good ideas and some clever traps could make them think twice." Meanwhile, the Council wasn't idle. They had their own network of spies, and the word had already spread that the formula had been stolen. Their response was swift and violent. An armada of ships, each one a monumental display of firepower, entered Earth's solar system under the guise of diplomacy, but everyone knew what it meant. They were there to set a deadline and prove their authority. The first wave of ships was a spectacle of advanced technology. Their sleek, glowing bodies hovered just outside the Earth's atmosphere, powerful enough to erase entire cities with a single weaponized burst. Lucas couldn't help but feel a flicker of doubt. Could humanity really hold its ground against such an overwhelmingly superior force? Sarah, however, had no time for doubt. "We'll find their weakness. We have to. We might not have their resources, but we have something far more dangerous: unpredictability. Lucas thought about that. The Council was used to predictable outcomes, to controlled scenarios where they always had the upper hand. But unpredictability? That was the one thing humanity was good at. We were the masters of chaos, the wild card in the galaxy that no one could quite figure out. We've got one chance, Lucas said, his mind racing through possible solutions. We need to make them believe Earth is no longer worth conquering. We need to make them question whether the speed formula is worth all the effort they've put into finding us. It was a dangerous game to play. If they didn't pull it off, Earth would be left in ruins, but if they succeeded, they could flip the entire galactic power structure on its head. They had the knowledge of the formula, but the Council had far superior weaponry. What they needed was to turn the tables. We need a message, Lucas continued, turning to Sarah. A message that says, we're not the species you think we are. Sarah raised an eyebrow. And how do you propose we send that message? Hijack one of their fleets and send it back to them? Lucas smiled. Not quite. We're going to show them how far humanity will go to keep what's ours. With that, the clock started ticking. Lucas and his team went to work, designing traps and creating chaos. Their goal wasn't just survival. It was proving to the Council and the galaxy that humanity wasn't a species to be trifled with. It was time for Earth to take its place among the stars. But first, the Council needed to learn the hard way: humans didn't just fight for survival. We fought for a future. And the first lesson was coming soon. The meeting was set for the following day, and Lucas knew it would be a volatile one. He had briefed his team, military tacticians, engineers, and a few trusted civilians who shared his vision. The stakes were now beyond anything they had imagined. Lucas wasn't the type to shy away from a challenge, but this time, the consequences would be astronomical. He had no intention of giving the speed formula back. But he needed a plan. A damn good one. The moment the Council's threat went public, global markets had gone into chaos. Governments scrambled to defend the planet, but Lucas had no faith in their ability to fight off the Council's fleet. The formula was the key. It was what gave them a fighting chance. Lucas didn't need an army, he needed brains, cunning, and every ounce of human ingenuity they could muster. They gathered in a secure underground facility, away from prying eyes. The conference room was tight, and the tension in the air was palpable. Lucas stepped to the front, his mind running through 1,000 calculations. He knew the Council would come with overwhelming force, but they didn't know humanity like he did. They didn't understand how humans could take a setback, learn from it, and turn it into something they could never anticipate. Here's the plan, Lucas began, his voice steady. We don't fight them head-on. That would be a suicide mission. But we have the speed formula now, and we have to protect it at all costs. We need to reverse engineer it, but more importantly, we need to outmaneuver them. If we do this right, we can make them rethink their entire strategy. A scientist in the back raised his hand. You mean, use the formula against them? Lucas nodded. Exactly. The formula isn't just about speed, it's about energy manipulation, quantum propulsion. It can be adapted for more than just travel. Think about it, what if we could turn their own technology back on them? What if we could make their fleet's propulsion systems malfunction mid-flight, or render their weapons useless? The room was silent for a moment as everyone processed the idea. Then the murmurs started, a spark of excitement growing in the room. We can't just make a single weapon. We need to think bigger. Earth doesn't have the resources to fight them in a conventional sense, another voice spoke up, this one from a former military strategist. But we do have something they don't, unpredictability. We can hit them where they least expect it. We don't need to win a full-scale battle. We just need to survive long enough to send a message, Lucas said, his eyes narrowing. We need to be the one thing they can't predict, human ingenuity. The team rallied together, brainstorming. Lucas gave them only one goal: adapt the speed formula to a series of covert devices that could sabotage the Council's fleet from within. A direct assault was impossible, but subversion, sabotage, and surprise were within their reach. They didn't need to outgun the enemy, just outthink them. The next 24 hours were a blur of sleepless nights, tense calculations, and rapid-fire debates. By the end of the second day, they had a plan, an audacious one. A series of stealth ships, armed with experimental devices that could disable entire fleets by interfering with their FTL drive systems. They would slip in and out of enemy lines, unseen and unheard, striking at the heart of the Council's power. But there was still the matter of timing. Lucas had to act quickly, but not recklessly. He knew that the Council wouldn't wait forever. They'd sent their threat, and they would follow through. No one threatened the Galactic Council and got away with it. Back at his lab, Lucas worked day and night to refine the devices. They were crude compared to the Council's advanced technology, but that was the point. Humans had always been able to make do with less. It was their defining trait, their greatest weapon. And in the chaos of the Council's arrogance, Lucas had found a crack in their armor. He would exploit it. But as the deadline drew closer, doubt crept in. What if the devices didn't work? What if they failed? The Council had vast resources, untold fleets, and weapons that made Earth's defenses look like toys. But Lucas pushed the doubt aside. Fear was the enemy now. Fear and hesitation would get them killed. They had to move forward, or Earth would burn. A message arrived from an unexpected source, one of the Council's former allies, a rogue species that had fallen out of favor. They offered information, a potential weakness in the Council's flagship, a way to bypass its defenses. It was a gamble, but it was the kind of information Lucas could use. He made contact, arranged a meeting, and within hours, he had a lead. He was no longer just defending Earth, he was playing the Council's game. The plan was set. The devices were ready. The human fleet, small but resourceful, was mobilizing. Earth wasn't going to lie down and wait for death. They would fight back. Lucas stood in the war room, watching the final pieces fall into place. They were about to make history. Whatever happens, we do this for the future, Lucas said to his team. For every person, every child, every family on Earth. We're not just fighting for survival. We're fighting to send a message. We're not their inferiors. We're not just some backwater species. We are humanity, and we fight back. The team nodded, ready for whatever came next. They were no longer just scientists and engineers. They were soldiers in a war for the future of their species. A war against a galactic empire that had underestimated humanity's will to survive. And Lucas Jennings was ready to lead them into the unknown. Lucas sat back, letting the weight of the situation settle in. The team was skeptical, but they had no other choice. The Council had their claws in nearly every sector of galactic power, and Earth was nothing more than a blip on their radar. They needed to outthink the most advanced species in the universe, and if there was one thing Lucas knew, it was that humans had a way of doing just that. The next few days were a blur. He was constantly on the move, coordinating with underground resistance groups, securing backup resources, and preparing the formula for its final phase. Every decision, every move was crucial. If the Council's fleet arrived and they were caught unprepared, humanity's future would be erased in an instant. The formula, still locked in its digital form, was more than just an FTL key. It was a weapon in its own right, something the Council had never anticipated. Lucas understood its mechanics, how it bent spacetime and manipulated quantum fields to allow faster-than-light travel. But he also realized something they hadn't accounted for. Humans didn't just create technology, they adapted it. They made it their own. And Lucas had a plan to use that creativity to his advantage. As he pieced together the final components, Lucas realized that humanity's greatest strength wasn't just their ability to learn quickly, but their ability to break systems and reassemble them into something entirely new. The formula wasn't just going to be used for space travel. It was going to be turned into a tool for guerrilla tactics, something that would confuse and destabilize the Council's forces, disorienting their fleets and forcing them into unpredictable patterns. With only days left before the deadline, Lucas gathered his team one last time. The tension had escalated since the first warning shot across the galaxy had been fired. They weren't just at war with the Council anymore, they were up against an empire that saw them as nothing more than pests to be exterminated. But Lucas had a different perspective. He knew the Council was terrified of human potential. If they didn't understand humans before, they would soon learn the hard way. "We've got one shot at this," Lucas said. "When the Council arrives, we don't fight them the way they expect. We'll be using the formula to confuse them, disrupt their command ships, and force them into a retreat. We'll move fast, use their own technology against them, and make sure they understand one thing: they can't predict us." The team nodded, but there was no illusion of ease. The Council wasn't some ragtag group of aliens, it was a well-oiled machine. If they failed, Earth would be obliterated. And yet, Lucas felt a strange sense of calm. They had something the Council couldn't account for: human unpredictability. In the days that followed, Lucas and his team worked around the clock. They reversed-engineered parts of the formula, adapting it into a series of quantum distortion fields, essentially, creating a network of ghost signatures that could scramble any detection systems the Council had in place. The Council's FTL drives wouldn't be able to track human ships, and they wouldn't be able to predict human movement. It wasn't just an attack, it was an entire strategy built on the element of surprise. The countdown to the deadline ticked away relentlessly. With each passing hour, Lucas could feel the pressure mounting. He kept the team focused, never letting anyone succumb to fear. The formula had to be perfect, and Lucas knew it wasn't just about the tech, it was about how they used it. They would need to turn the very thing the Council valued most into the weapon they feared. On the day the Council's fleet was supposed to arrive, everything was ready. Earth was silent, waiting. The formula was now embedded in their defense systems, and the first human ships were prepped, cloaked in quantum distortion fields that would make them invisible to the Council's sensors. Lucas watched the stars on the monitor as the first wave of enemy ships appeared at the edge of the system. Massive, sleek vessels, full of arrogance, full of certainty. The fleet had arrived, and it was clear they had no intention of negotiating. They came with one purpose: to destroy. But they didn't expect what came next. As Lucas activated the first quantum field, a ripple ran through space. The Council's ships began to move erratically, their coordinates scrambled, their commanders confused. They couldn't understand it. Human ships that should have been no match for their advanced fleets were now ghosting through the stars, appearing and disappearing at will, leaving the Council's advanced systems completely useless. The chaos on the enemy side was immediate. Their ships couldn't keep up with the shifting patterns, their systems failing to track the human vessels. The Council's command ships were disoriented, unable to communicate effectively, as human ships launched precise, coordinated strikes from unexpected angles. Lucas could hear the frantic communications coming from the alien fleet, their leaders growing more desperate by the second. He knew this wouldn't last forever. The Council would adapt, just as humans always adapted. But it was enough. The first wave of confusion was enough to buy them time, to buy Earth time. The longer they could keep the Council off balance, the better chance humanity had to survive. As the battle raged on, Lucas couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. The Council thought they had it all figured out. But in their arrogance, they had underestimated humanity. They had underestimated the human spirit, the drive to survive, the ability to turn even the most impossible odds into an advantage. The fight had only just begun.